like to take the questions with regard to ethical and legal issues. Basically, I have done my PhD in law from National Law School and medical law ethics from National Law School. So this is the credential. Being a doctor, I've been working with regard to medical legal issues. So already we have discussed about these issues. But again, today, this presentation, I would like to place a disclaimer telling that if you have any legal issues, please do contact an advocate. And this presentation is for academic and training purpose only. This is the disclaimer. Further, please go through the guideline which has been released on 2020. But however, there is a new draft available, as I mentioned. I think the previous presenters also discussed about that. Let's understand the legal issues. If you look at the literature with regard to telemedicine, there are three important issues which crop up around telemedicine. The first and the foremost is responsibility and potential liability of a healthcare professional when delivering telehealth services. So what are the legal issues? How they are worded according to the national laws? That is one. With regard to confidentiality and privacy, the reason being is between the doctor and the patient, now there are too many participants are coming or too many actors are coming. One is the internet service provider on the side of the doctor. It may be BSNL, Airtel, whatever. The router, what we are using, the telemedicine equipment, what we are using. Again, from there, on the patient side, is using a mobile phone or what internet service is using. There may be any of these people may leak the data. So the confidentiality issues comes into a picture. And the privacy of the patient records, where you're going to keep, how it is kept, whether it is in the physical form or in the computer, where you are keeping. So that is a second important issue. The third, which is coming very commonly seen in US, is jurisdictional problem. Whether a doctor sitting in Bengluru, can he provide services to a patient who is sitting in Assam? Or else there may be a question, sir, I have licensed in India, I have passed out in India, but I am currently working in NHS, UK. Now because of COVID, I feel I should provide services to my countrymen in India, whether I am allowed. Or else there may be a patient who is come all the way from Nepal to take treatment in Bengluru or in Delhi or in Chandigarh, and he goes back and he wants to have certain questions to be answered. He's in Nepal. Can we do services? So these are the three important legal issues which arise in telemedicine. But with this, the question is, what are the legal standards which are applicable in telemedicine? Please understand, already my previous speakers have spoken. The very important is whatever laws which are applicable for in-person consultation, the same thing will be applicable even for telemedicine. Like Consumer Protection Act, which is applicable for in-person, it is also available here. Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, which are applicable for in-person consultation, that is also applicable in telemedicine. That means whatever the laws are there in India, all those laws which are applicable for in-person consultation is also applicable for telemedicine. That is, you need to understand. Not only that, whatever the Indian Medical Council, now the National Medical Commission is there, those laws which are there, which is applicable, also will be applicable. That means the laws, just because you are providing telemedicine, that doesn't mean you will walk away telling that, sir, it is a telemedicine hai, 2 minute ki baat ho gayi, तो लॉस कैसे एप्लीकेबल होगा? नहीं, जो लॉ इन पर्सन में है वो टेलीमेडिसिन में भी एप्लीकेबल है. So you can't walk away. That means you have to be slightly careful and understand what are those laws are there. That is A. B. जो क्लिनिकल गाइडलाइंस है, जैसे कि हाइपरटेंशन, डायबिटीज के लिए जो गाइडलाइन है ट्रीटमेंट के लिए, वो गाइडलाइन टेलीमेडिसिन में भी फॉलो करना है. ये नहीं बताना है कि सर हम टेलीमेडिसिन में दवा दे दिया तो हमने ये नहीं किया, ये नहीं हो सकता है. तो जो ऑल स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स है, जो क्लिनिकल गाइडलाइंस है, all those need to be followed even if you are providing telemedicine guideline. That means you are providing telemedicine services. So all laws are which are applicable is applicable. So please understand, there is no discount telling that you are on telemedicine. That is one. But considering the quality of care, what are those laws which are applicable even in telemedicine and in-person practice? There are two important things we need to understand for all medical fraternity. It may be doctor, it may be nurse, or it may be any counselor. two important laws. One is Bolam's test. Another one is Bolito test. I'll talk about this because you need to understand this, then only you'll be able to appreciate what are the legal issues which come in. These are the standard principle you need to understand. One is Bolam's test. Bolam's test is a test which occurred in 1957. 1957 में England में एक patient Bolam, he is suffering from depression. उनको डिप्रेशन की बीमारी है, रिपीटेड डिप्रेशन हो रहा है, सो रिकरेंट डिप्रेसिव डिसऑर्डर उसका बीमारी का नाम दिया गया है. तो उसने फ्रेनरी हॉस्पिटल के लिए ट्रीटमेंट के लिए जाता है. तो फ्रेनरी हॉस्पिटल में डॉक्टर्स देखते हैं हाँ इसको डिप्रेशन है, चलो इनको ट्रीटमेंट शुरू करना है. कौन सा ट्रीटमेंट? सिंस ही हैड सीवियर डिप्रेशन, डिप्रेशन बहुत ज्यादा था, इसीलिए उसको इलेक्ट्रोकन्वल्सिव थेरेपी, शॉक ट्रीटमेंट देने के लिए डिसाइड किया. पेशेंट ने भी कंसेंट दे दिया, मतलब उस टाइम पे रिटन कंसेंट नहीं था. इट वाज 1957. तो पहला ECT, यूजुअली इलेक्ट्रोकन्वल्सिव थेरेपी, a mild shock treatment will be given, and that because of these seizures they give electroconvulsive therapy so that the seizure comes. Because of the seizure, it is like a rebooting the system. That is the way we can understand in simple way. I don't want to go into the detail. If I go, it will take time. It is like by giving ECT, he gets a convulsion or seizures, there will be redistribution of the neurochemical changes which occurs in the brain. That's the simple way of putting across. I'll making it very rudimentary. So you have to give around 6 to 7 times. That means today I have given, alternate day they give. First seizure, nothing happened. Second seizure, what happened was he developed fracture. Acetabular fracture होता है. See, in 1957, जब electroconvulsive therapy देते हैं, उसको restrain किया जाता. That means they will hold his hands and legs because he develops convulsion when we give the ECT. Current देने के time पे, उसी time पे, there was anesthesia was coming up during 1950s. Anesthesia was slowly entering. One is ether देना है, muscle relaxant देना है. So at that time, this person was not offered this modified ECT, or what we call it as anesthesia nahi diya tha. So this patient, when he developed acetabular fracture, he became very angry, went to the court. This is the first time in the history of the mankind, एक patient doctor के खिलाफ जा रहा है, telling that I went for treatment for depression, अभी इन्होंने fracture करा दिया. So at that time, there was no any precedence, there was no law for medical negligence. उस टाइम का जो लंदन में जज मैकनायर, a judge, he thought, how can I now decide whether the doctors erred or not? So obviously what he did was he called the doctors, experts in that field. So some of the doctors came and said, देखिए जज साहब, जब हम इस तरह का डिप्रेशन में ECT तो देते हैं, हम लोग ECT देते हैं, उस टाइम पे anesthesia भी देते हैं. Around 50% of the psychiatrists said we give anesthesia. Another 50% said नहीं सर, अब anesthesia देंगे, anesthesia से death भी हो सकता है. We are giving general anesthesia. And in 1957, anesthesia was slowly evolving, and at that time ether was the one was given. Muscle relaxant देंगे तो problem भी हो सकती है. So the whole experts were divided into two. One was we will give anesthesia or we will give modified ECT. Another one is no sir, direct ECT current देंगे. So again the judge was completely confused. Then he realized the doctor who was giving ECT followed the two system of practice. One system was give anesthesia and ECT. Another one is don't give anesthesia, give ECT. That means that was the prevalent practice. Since the doctor followed one of the practice, the Judge McNair told the doctors are not negligent. What does it mean? This was the landmark judgment. Even Supreme Court of India follows this Bolam test. That means if the doctors or any other medical professionals follow the standard of practice which is prevalent at that time, that means the doctor is not punishable. That is not negligent. That is Bolam test. So in nutshell, now the Bolam test is considered there should be a duty of care by the doctor. If there is a breach of duty by the doctor and that breach directly causes the damage to the patient, then the doctor is liable. This standard of care, how we decide? One is duty of care है, पेशेंट आया आपको दिखाने के लिए, वो ड्यूटी हो गया, यू एक्सेप्टेड फॉर ट्रीटमेंट, दैट इज ड्यूटी ऑफ केयर. स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ केयर, जो डॉक्टर बैंगलोर में बैठा है एज ए मे बी पीएच से डॉक्टर हो या पीएच से अनदर डॉक्टर फ्रॉम अनदर बिहार में हो, जो स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ केयर सेम होना चाहिए. दैट स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ केयर, इफ वी आर एबल टू फॉलो वन ऑफ देम, then he is not responsible or he is not medically negligent. That is the way the Bolam test is written. This is in 1957. Till date, it is applicable across the world. Bolam test is considered, and even in India, it is there. But however, in 1984, there was another decision came from UK. That is Bolito test. So Bolam test समझ गए कि जो भी हम practice करेंगे, वो standard of practice guidelines जो होता है, standard जो होता है, वो maintain करना है. The court will not expect you to provide high standard of care just like AIMS and JIPPER, or else the lowest care जो faith healer करता है उस तरह नहीं करना है. A balanced, reasonable care करना है. So if a doctor is erred in a district hospital, invariably the expert will be called and asked, if it in a district hospital अगर आप बैठते हो, क्या क्या करते हो? Is it the practice? And the expert will say, no sir, district hospital में यही हो सकता है, doctor has done right. Then the court will say is not negligent. So that is the standard of care. An expert gives an opinion. Okay, that is Bolam test. Now there was another issue which I told, Bolito test, which came in 1984. इसमें क्या होता है, एक पैट्रिको बोलित 2 साल का बच्चा है, वो सेंट बर्तलोमो हॉस्पिटल में चला जाता है. मतलब उसकी माता पिता लेके जाते हैं क्योंकि बच्चे को बहुत खांसी होता है, खांसी जुकाम है. तो उधर का पीडियाट्रिशियन ने उसको एडमिट करते हैं क्योंकि बहुत बुखार भी है, बहुत खांस रहा है. The child is coughing to that level, the child goes into a breath holding spell की तरह जा रहा है. तो आईसीयू में एडमिट है बच्चा, और एक नर्स 1-on-1 केयर के लिए देते हैं. तो एक बार एडमिट हुआ है, 12 घंटा भी नहीं हुआ है, द चाइल्ड गोज इनटू सीवियर कॉफ. तो उसी टाइम इमीडिएटली द नर्स कॉल्स द ड्यूटी डॉक्टर और बोलते हैं, डॉक्टर साहब आ जाइए, जो पैट्रिक बोलितो है वो बहुत कॉफ कर रहा है और हैज हैविंग डिफिकल्टी इन ब्रीथिंग. डॉक्टर साहब बोलते मैं अभी आ जाऊंगा थोड़ा. तो विद इन 5 minutes द चाइल्ड रिकवर्ड. अगेन द नर्स कॉल्ड एंड टोल्ड, सर बच्चा ठीक हो गया, अभी कोई जरूरत नहीं आने के लिए. Second time it happens, again the nurse calls, the child is having a cyanotic episode. The doctor doesn't come at that time. The child goes into complete cyanotic spell. The child develops a brain damage, and then after some time, maybe after 1 or 3 weeks down the line, the child dies. So now the parents go to the court and say the doctor was negligent. Now again they applied Bolam test now first, because that was prevalent in UK and it is up. So they said, the pediatrician, they said, if I go and see the child in ICU, the child is already having cough, irritation hai. If I do intubation, it will cause further constriction हो जाता है बच्चे की larynx में और तुरंत मर जाता है. So I will not do any intubation. Some of them said already it is in this process, let's take a risk, 50%, 50%. 50% बोले हम लोग intubation करेंगे. Another 50% of the experts said we don't do intubation, we will give some oxygen. So both house was divided. But here the court did not agree the expert's opinion and said पहले तुम आना चाहिए आईसीयू में बच्चे को देखने के लिए. That means Bolito test came into picture. Whatever the experts may say in the court of law, but that expert's explanation should be logically explained to the court. That means there should be logical explanation. Here, Bolam test was applied telling that if the doctor went to the ICU, here the doctor did not go to the ICU. So the court said, if he had gone, either he would have intubated or not intubated. So if he has not gone, if you would have taken a decision not intubated, still the child would have damaged. Even if you had done, the child would have died immediately. So the outcome was discussed, but the court was said nothing. Pehle to tum jao, go and examine the child. You are not examined, and the court said, we will not accept Bolam and we will apply Bolito test here, since the doctor did not go. And the Bolam test ka jo test hai, usme je bolte hai, there should be test of the expert should be logically explained. to the court. If you don't explain logically, then it will not take it. So ये दोनों test है जो in person में है. The same thing will be applied even in telemedicine. Suppose if a patient is having COVID, he's coughing, and if he contacts me, and I'm sitting in Bengluru, and I say A, B, C, D. Similarly, another doctor who is sitting in Pondicherry, and he sees the patient, he should be also following the same guideline. Both of us should be in the same standard of care. I should not talk something nonsense and say, you do this, you take that, and which is completely wrong means I'll be considered as error. Bolam test will be applied. And they will say you erred in the standard of care. So please understand, in telemedicine, the same thing happens. So ये सब होने के लिए बोलैम एंड बोली तो अप्लाई करने के लिए कंसल्टेशन की जरूरत है. तो क्या करना है कंसल्टेशन में, टेलीमेडिसिन में? बोथ पार्टीज शुड आइडेंटिफाई ईच अदर. पेशेंट जब आएगा बोलेगा मेरा नाम ये है, मैं ये हूं, एंड मैं इसी जगह पे बैठ के मैं टेलीमेडिसिन कर रहा हूं. सो द पेशेंट शुड आइडेंटिफाई, and the doctor also should identify himself and say, this is my name, I am a so-and-so specialist, ये मेरा registration number है. And doctor should ask for the identity card of the patient. And then, because अगर उस तरफ जो patient बैठा है, he may say some other name, and you'll be issuing the certificate or maybe the prescription in somebody else's name. So you have to identify the opposite party. So for every touch base with the patient, you need to identify yourself and you need to ask for the identification of the patient. But if you know the patient very well, sir, वो patient हर बार हमारे पास आते हैं, इस बार online आए थे, मैं उनको पहचानता हूँ, then no need of identification. If the RMP knows the patient very well and the family, don't worry at all. If you don't recognize, and then you need to ask for the ID card. So that is, anonymous consultation is prohibited. Anonymous from the patient side and also anonymous from the doctor side. ये नहीं है कि मैं वीडियो ऑफ करूंगा सर, मैं ये अपना जानकारी नहीं दूंगा अपना, then it is prohibited. That will be considered as a misconduct. इमरजेंसी की बात आती है. सर अगर इमरजेंसी में रात को 11 बजे फोन करते हैं पेशेंट, क्या करना है? सो इमरजेंसी कंसल्टेशन के लिए अगर आपका फोन नहीं उठाते हैं and patient dies, will I be held responsible? No. टेलीमेडिसिन कंसल्टेशन ये है कि आपको you have to be on and you should be able to provide the services. If you take the call emergency में, then if you are providing the services, emergency के लिए you have to ask them, you have to ask them to do first aid, tell them to go to the nearest hospital or the nearest registered medical practitioner, because emergency, you are sitting in a remote place, you can't do anything. And the patient is alone on the other side, or the patient and family members are there. What you can do? You can't do anything. So in emergency situation, you request them to go for a nearest consultation. Please understand this. Emergency situation, you need to ask them to go to the nearest hospital. So that you need to understand. And what you can do is you can give counseling, health education, and a first aid, whatever the first aid, if somebody has done first aid in the family, you can ask them to do the first aid and ask them to go to the nearest doctor. Second important, already हमारे experts ने बता दिया है, you should not continue to insist आप telemedicine में आइए हर बार नहीं. Patient has right to say I want to come and meet you in person. At the same time, the doctor also can see भैया आपको telemedicine में ठीक नहीं होने वाला है, आपको in person आना जरूरी है. That means both the parties have been given the freedom to choose in-person consultation. And the doctor can refuse and say, भैया आप हम टेलीमेडिसिन में नहीं देखेंगे क्योंकि आपका सिम्टम्स बहुत अजीबोगरीब है, आपको एग्जामिन करना जरूरी है. अगर वो बोलेंगे, that is legally valid. That means both the parties have been given freedom to go for in-person consultation. You can't continue to insist telemedicine में आएंगे. You can't insist as a doctor. At the same time, patient cannot insist, sir, हम आपको ही दिखाएंगे, telemedicine में दिखाएंगे, वो नहीं होगा. अगर वो बोलेंगे हम telemedicine में आएंगे, you can stop the consultation with such patients. That complete freedom has been given. Before giving any prescription, that you have to understand. Doctors all should understand. You have to arrive at a provisional diagnosis. Especially if you are giving any prescription. Prescription for testing and investigation, don't worry. बट इफ यू आर गिविंग फॉर एनी अदर मेडिसिन यू आर दे रहे हो तो प्रोविजनल डायग्नोसिस जानना जरूरी है, वो आपकी प्रिस्क्रिप्शन पे होना जरूरी है. That means you have to make a provisional diagnosis, at least differential diagnosis. मैं ये सोच रहा हूं वो प्रिस्क्रिप्शन में आना चाहिए कि मैं ये जो पेशेंट आया है उसके लिए फीवर है, फीवर के लिए मुझे ये लग रहा है कि टाइफाइड हो सकती है, ये ट्यूबरकुलोसिस हो सकती है, इसीलिए मैं टाइफाइड का ये टेस्ट करा रहा हूं और ये ब्लड एग्जामिनेशन करा रहा हूं और ये दवाई दे रहा हूं सिम्टोमेटिक के लिए अभी फिलहाल. वो आना जरूरी है. Without provisional diagnosis, don't dispatch your prescription. Provisional diagnosis is at least essential. अगर आप बहुत बढ़िया हो, आप complete diagnosis कर सकते हैं तो बढ़िया है. Otherwise, give a differential diagnosis. Don't give a prescription without any diagnosis. And fourth important चीज है, don't prescribe prohibited medicines. What are these prohibited medicine on telemedicine? सिंपल है, जो एडिक्शन हो सकती है मेडिसिन से वो दवा प्रोहिबिटेड है. ये जो कौन सा एडिक्शन हो सकती है? बेंजोडाइजेपिन नींद की दवाई है, और ओपियोइड जो कॉफ सिरप होती है, कोडिन, मॉर्फिन, पेथिडिन, पेन किलर्स, वो सब प्रोहिबिटेड है, शेड्यूल एक्स में आती है. एंड ऑल्सो नार्कोटिक एंड ड्रग्स साइकोट्रोपिक सब्सटेंस 1985 में जो रेगुलेटेड मेडिसिन है, those medicines cannot be given online. It has to be in person. If you give telemedicine based prescription for benzodiazepine, it will be considered as a misconduct. So don't prescribe list C. List C आप दिया है, that means risk equator आ जाते हैं. That means no need to prove that you are negligent. The prescription itself says that you have given a prohibited medicine, your medical negligence is established. No need to give any evidence. So that will be considered. Coming to the prerequisite. So if starting any medicines requires some particular SOPs, some blood investigation, please do it. Say that अगर पहली बार आता है, आपको लगता है उसको टेस्टिंग करना है या कोई इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना है, उसको जनरल फिजिकल एग्जामिनेशन की जरूरत है, यू कैन से प्लीज गो टू नियरेस्ट डॉक्टर एंड गेट द फिजिकल एग्जामिनेशन डन. नहीं सर, हमारे बगल में एक नर्स है, आस्क योर नर्स टू गेट दिस एग्जामिनेशन डन. बीपी, पल्स, टेम्परेचर, वो सब लेके आ जाओ. If the nurse is able to do, excellent. So she will sign and send, yes, I have done this examination, these are the findings. Or else you can go to another doctor and he does the examination and he sends it, and you are a specialist sitting in a different center, and okay, based upon this examination, I will go ahead with these investigations, and you can issue the prescription. So important cheez here legally, before you give any prescription on telemedicine, make sure you have got all the information to make a diagnosis. Reasonable information you have to get. That is very important. So, and you are prescribing the medicine in the best interest of the patient. That principle should be kept in your mind. So already we have discussed about list O, list A, list B, list C. Prohibited list मैंने बता रहा हूँ, जो नीचे है list C बता रहा हूँ मैं, because that is a caution. C मतलब मेरे हिसाब से Schedule X of the Drugs and Cosmetic Act and Narcotic and Drugs Psychotropic Substance Act of 1985, ये दोनों जो लिस्ट है आप किसी भी हालत में नहीं लिखेंगे on telemedicine. So these are the list. Common है amphetamine, methamphetamine, phencyclidine, methylphenidate. मैं सिंपल चीजें बता देता हूँ. ये methylphenidate वगैरह दवा है, ये 40-50 रुपए का एक टैबलेट है, लेकिन पार्टी में ये 2000-3000 में बिकती है. समझ लीजिए, अगर एक 10 टैबलेट लेके जाता है और पार्टी में उसको देता है तो सोच लीजिए 500 रुपए में 10 टैबलेट मिल जाएगा उसे, और जाएगा 50,000 रुपए कमाएगा. इसीलिए ये प्रोहिबिटेड है. और वो बंदा टेलीमेडिसिन में बैठ के, मैं आज इधर बैठ के पेशेंट, सोच लीजिए अगर वो पंजाब में बैठा है, बेंगलुरु का एक डॉक्टर से प्रिस्क्रिप्शन ले सकता है, चेन्नई से ले सकता है, दिल्ली से ले सकता है, और 5 प्रिस्क्रिप्शन लेके वो दवा यूज करके बेच सकता है. तो इसीलिए ये दवा प्रोहिबिटेड है. यू कांट गिव दैट. बट हाउएवर under NDPS medicines there has been amendment. This is amendment was come on 11/4/2020 में एक amendment आया. उसमें 3 चीजें NDPS drugs have been allowed to prescribe. One is phenobarbital जो मिर्गी में यूज करते हैं, सीजर्स में यूज करते हैं, GTCS में. Another one is clobazam. Again, this is a drug which is benzodiazepine which is used for seizure control. Another one is a clonazepam. तीनों दवा सीजर्स में यूज करते हैं. Those can be prescribed and they have been given a relaxation as per the MCI at that time. Amendment hai, it is same thing is being also considered in the current amendment also, the new this one. This is the prescription. Please follow this prescription pattern. And now there is a prescription pattern में ये कहा जाएगा, इसमें missing है consultation you are doing from which place, that will be added in the prescription. मतलब अगर मैं कर्नाटका में बैठ के अगर prescription लिख रहा हूं, अगर कुछ भी गलती हो जाती है, patient will give a complaint. If I am in Karnataka, it will be given in Karnataka State Medical Council. That is the way it has been considered now, because you can't give it somewhere else, because the patient would have received a treatment somewhere in Guwahati or maybe in Shillong or maybe in Tripura. So you can't, if he gives complaint, it will not be considered. You have to give a complaint in Karnataka Medical. That is the way the draft has been given now at this point of time. It has to be notified. So this prescription pattern you need to follow. Sir, Dr. Saab injection लिख के दे सकते हैं क्या? This is another legal question which comes in. Sorry to say that you can't give injection on telemedicine. You can give injection prescription only if there is an RMP on the other side. Patient के साथ और एक doctor है, then you can give. Or else patient के साथ अगर nurse है, नहीं तो healthcare worker है, जो injection दे सकते हैं, then only you will give the prescription with regard to injections. Please understand that. So you will not give any injectable prescription unless patient के side में अगर doctor हो या nurse हो, who knows how to give this injection. And you know they are competent to give that injection, because the complete responsibility will be on the prescribing doctor. So you have to make sure that. But however, there is a relaxation for this. Self-injecting medicines are allowed to prescribe, like injection. Insulin hai, वो self injection hai, so patient knows how to take injection and he's been taking since 2 years. You can give that prescription injection like insulin, low molecular weight like heparin. Vaccines usually they have to take the vaccine and they have to go to a nurse or maybe to a doctor to get those vaccines. So these are allowed. That is the reason for COVID-19 vaccine के लिए कोई prescription की जरूरत नहीं थी, because government of India said that the public can go and take vaccine. That is the relaxation has been given. So it will be considered as the over-the-counter medication. Hence, there was no requirement of COVID-19. Even in telemedicine, such exemption will be given whenever there is a disaster. First, next one is explicit consent लेना जरूरी है कुछ चीजों में. कहाँ? अगर आप initiate कर रहे हो telemedicine, अगर nurse initiating the telemedicine, सोच लीजिए एक nurse है, she is in Uttarakhand, maybe in Pithoragarh, and her एक patient आया है and there is no doctor available in the PHC and she wants to consult a specialist, maybe in Rishikesh AIMS, maybe AIMS Delhi, नहीं तो JIPMER, NIMHANS में consult करना चाहती है. Then she has to take the consent from the patient, explicit consent. वो लेना जरूरी है. अगर one is that one. Second one is if you are sending the prescription to a pharmacy directly. ये आजकल बहुत ज्यादा हो रहा है. डॉक्टर्स बोल रहे हैं जाके इधर ही ले लो, इस फार्मेसी ले लो. वो नहीं होना चाहिए. अगर वो करेंगे, कंसेंट लेना जरूरी है पेशेंट से, बिकॉज यू आर सेंडिंग द प्रिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ ए पेशेंट टू समबडी एल्स. दैट मीन्स कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी वायलेशन हो रही है. तो इसीलिए बिफोर यू सेंड द प्रिस्क्रिप्शन टू समबडी एल्स, टेक द कंसेंट. सो दैट एक्सप्लिसिट कंसेंट इज इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड इफ यू आर यूजिंग द पेशेंट डेटा, सोच लीजिए आजकल बहुत कर रहे हैं सोशल मीडिया पे, पेशेंट का फोटो ले लिया, पेशेंट का वीडियो ले लिया, पेशेंट का पार्ट्स फोटो लेके, टुडे आई डिड दिस सर्जरी, टुडे आई एग्जामिन दिस पेशेंट. अगर वो कर रहे हैं, पेशेंट की कंसेंट लेना जरूरी है. कंसेंट को छोड़ दीजिए. डोंट पुट इट एनीथिंग ऑन सोशल मीडिया इवन इफ द पेशेंट इज गिवन कंसेंट. व्हाई? आई विल टेल यू. सोच लीजिए आज पेशेंट ने बोल दिया मैंने कंसेंट दिया है, आपने डाल दिया इंटरनेट पे, सोशल मीडिया पे, एंड इट बिकेम्स वायरल. नाउ द पेशेंट इज वरीड और बोलता है मैं कंसेंट वापस ले रहा हूं. Patient will withdraw the consent. He has a right to withdraw the consent. अगर withdraw ले लिया, आप कहां किस मोबाइल फोन पे जाके डिलीट करेंगे? That means the property of the patient's photo and photograph has been transferred to the doctor by giving a consent. Now you have given it to the public. Imagine. It will be a serious issue in the court of law. So if you want to take a consent for any purpose, for taking photograph or video, take a irrevocable consent. That means you have to explain the patient, भैया ये फोटोग्राफ है, मैं ये ट्रेनिंग के लिए डाल रहा हूं, ये सोशल मीडिया में जाएगा, अगर आप 2 दिन के बाद आप बोलेंगे वो वापस नहीं ले सकते, हर मोबाइल फोन में हो सकता है, वो उसको जानना जरूरी है. And he has to understand that he has to give a consent. That you need to understand whatever the photograph. And current telemedicine guideline which has been released, they are very particular about this. Without consent, don't do it. So confidentiality. सर मैंने टेलीमेडिसिन में जो चीजें हैं मेडिकल रिकॉर्ड से मैंने रखा है और किसी ने हैक कर दिया, whether doctor will be held responsible. Telemedicine guideline is very clear. What does it say? It says registered medical practitioner will not be held responsible for a breach of confidentiality if there is a reasonable evidence to believe that the patient's privacy and confidentiality has been compromised by a technology breach or by a person other than RMP. सोच लीजिए अगर आप टेलीमेडिसिन दे रहे हो और किसी ने थर्ड पार्टी हैक कर दिया, डॉक्टर will not be held responsible. But you have to prove that you are not involved, somebody else has hacked it. A. B. अगर आप टेलीमेडिसिन दे रहे हो और सोच लीजिए आपका टेलीमेडिसिन टेक्नीशियन सब डेटा लेके he released it on social media, you will not be held responsible. The person who is leaking will be held responsible. So you have to understand this. The RMP need to have a reasonable degree of care and he should not be involved in the leaking of the data. Then the doctor will not be held responsible. Sir, what is this reasonable degree? US में एक study किया गया है how the data has been leaked from the doctor. Most of the time what happens is doctors either laptop or camera are stolen or they have lost it. At that time somebody hacks it and finds all those data and they leaks it. That is the commonest phenomena. So in India what is happening in the few incidents, doctor laptop पे कर रहे हैं, उसकी टेलीमेडिसिन होने के बाद उसका बच्चा यूज कर रहा है वो लैपटॉप. Then definitely you are not doing a reasonable degree of care. The child may put those content online. So be careful. Make sure that your laptop is reasonably secured and you have control and you have locked it by using password. So you have to maintain those important things. So with regard to social media, again, I will be very clear. Don't put the data of the patient. Don't take photograph inside the ward. सोच लीजिए यार आप फोटो ले रहे हो अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ, बगल में अगर पेशेंट का फोटो भी आ जाता है साइड में एंड ही रेजेस ऑब्जेक्शन, मेरे बिना बताए आपने मेरा फोटो है उसमें आप सोशल मीडिया में डाल दिया. Let me be very clear, ladies and gentlemen, doctors and nurses, you will be taken to task. So don't take any photographs inside the ward or outside the ward or in the hospital. Make sure if you're taking, the patients are excluded. So please understand. And what are those records you need to capture in telemedicine? First and the foremost, you have to have a record of telemedicine interaction. What is this record? Don't do audio or video recording. We don't want audio or video recording. You need to have the records at what time the patient called, what was the phone number, and what was the complaints, and at what time the consultation ended. It is available as a log in your computer. You need to know how to save it. Suppose it is a WhatsApp call, video call. You write there, WhatsApp call from this number came. At what time? What was the patient name? If you know the Aadhaar number likhiye. And then it ended at this time. This is my diagnosis, prescription given. And a copy of the prescription number 2. You have to keep the prescription. So these are the minimum records you need to keep. Don't do audio or video recording. If you want to do audio and video recording, you need to take explicit consent. Why, sir? Simple cheez hai. There was a Supreme Court judgment, Puttaswamy versus Union of India, in Aadhaar card judgment. In Puttaswamy versus of Union of India, Supreme Court had said, All these biometric data are right to fundamental privacy. So इसी को मद्देनजर देखते हुए अभी जो नया टेलीमेडिसिन गाइडलाइन आया है उसमें क्लियरली सेट दैट if either of the party, audio or video recording karna hai, either doctor wants to record or the patient wants to record, they need to take the consent of the other party. If they don't take the consent, that means right to freedom of privacy and confidentiality will be a task. And those evidence will not be used in the court of law, especially in the NMC at this point of time. So this law is there already in UK and US. In India, it is going to be shortly will be implemented if this NMC guidelines comes into picture. So that introduction has been brought in. And finally, these are the records. I would rather say if you are an individual doctor, what you do is use this telemedicine for interaction. Keep all the data by writing it on a paper. Don't worry whether it is in a cloud, all those things, keep it on paper. If you have a third party, very good application, which is very secured, you're ready to pay, and the patient is able to bear the cost by a third party application, EHR, electronic health record. Otherwise, this is the simplest. Talk to the patient, just I'm talking to you, write it down on the paper and take the photograph and send the prescription to him and keep this as a record for you. And you have to keep it for 3 years. This is the simplest way to do it. And this is the cheapest way and economical for our patient. And telemedicine guidelines of India has allowed all these WhatsApp, social media for simple reason. Telemedicine is there to reach the last person in the last village who can use without any training this social media. He can use this social media easily. So that is the reason we have allowed that. If you use all these, something called as HIPAA compliance, all those things, if you do that, there are too many people will come again between the doctor and the patient. Too many people comes means confidentiality is going for a toss. So that is the reason we want, there are two important reasons. They have made it very simple, where the patient can use the media easily, one. Second one, you have to, again, you can see WhatsApp, there is end-to-end encryption is there. So these are a simple technique and we need to reach the last person. And you need to provide the receipt for providing telemedicine. That is another one. And another important is for all the doctors, don't solicit patient on social media. Facebook पे ये मत लिखो मैं 10% discount दूंगा, मैं social media में I am available on this number, उस तरह का advertisement नहीं देना है. If you solicit patient either directly or indirectly using social media or whatever means, that is not allowed. Please understand about that. Advertisement for profession is not allowed. And the last part is cross-border telemedicine. Between two states in India, it is allowed. If you are sitting in Delhi, you can see the patient who is in Kerala. So no problem. Between two countries is a big headache issue. At this point of time, it is not allowed. That means if you are sitting in India and you want to prescribe a medicine for a patient who is in UK, it is not allowed. It will not be honored. And if you do it, it is at your own risk. Or else, if you want to see a patient or doctor who is in America by telemedicine, it is your headache. Tomorrow, no consumer court will take that case because the doctor is somewhere else. And between new patient and old patient, I'll not enter into that because we are already running out of time. If there are any questions, I'll take it. And with regard to any case of litigation with regard to consumer court, as per the new Consumer Act of 2019, he can give complaint anywhere he wants. That means patient is at the liberty to give a complaint. Imagine if I'm sitting in Bengluru and I'm seeing a patient who is in Ladakh and something goes wrong after my prescription, he can give a complaint in Ladakh Consumer Court. Maybe even in Nubra Valley. Nubra Valley has Hundar has a civil court, and he can give a complaint there, and I have to hire a lawyer there, or I have to go there, or through telemedicine, I have to fight the case. That means, as per consumer law, Consumer Protection Act, the consumer can give complaint wherever he wants. So that is the point. So criminal case, it is a big headache, especially gross negligence occurs. In such a scenario, gross negligence, simple example, मैं बता देता हूँ, patient is fever, वो सब है, and doctor said, take injection penicillin. And he has given procaine penicillin, 5 cc, whatever he has given. And the patient takes it and he dies. Then it will be considered as a gross negligence for two reasons. One reason is he has told to take the injection by patient himself, one, or else he has not told to do a test dose which he doesn't know. Third one is injections are not allowed to be prescribed on telemedicine. On 3 accounts, it will be considered as gross negligence. Now the question comes is where the patient is there, the patient died, the jurisdiction, or where the doctor is there. Invariably, where the crime occurs, where the body is there. So invariably, wherever the patient is there and died, that is the gross negligence. There the case will be taken. So you need to be understand about this. And now the issue comes is medical certificate. This is again a very, very dicey situation. And I would request you, if there is any medical certificate request is there, ask them to come for in-person consultation and check their verification, ID, vagara, and then only you issue certificate. Because in telemedicine, the ghost people can come and then they call it in a different name. And nowadays, our youngsters are so intelligent. They will change the name on the Aadhaar card and they show the Aadhaar card to you with somebody else's Aadhaar card, somebody else's number, and you have issued the certificate. So better is ask them to come in person, see them, look at the identification mark, and then they issue the certificate. So that is my advice. But you want to give a certificate on telemedicine, there is no prohibition. This is my caution. That is the only thing. And teletriage, I think there already has been discussed about this. I will not go into this detail. And there is sometimes caregiver can initiate the telemedicine consultation. मतलब सोच लीजिए अगर caregiver है पिताजी या father or mother can initiate a teleconsultation for a child when the child is when the patient is present and when the patient is absent. So in such a scenario, what can be done if it is a minor and the patient is present? Go ahead with the consultation. If it is a adult patient है, सोच लीजिए dementia patient के लिए अगर his son wants to do the consultation, take the consent of the adult who is sitting with them. Don't do without the patient. And if the patient is absent, and it can be done only follow-up consult. And follow-up consult के लिए authorisation letter होना जरूरी है, photo ID दिखाना जरूरी है, and you need to know and identify the patient's relative. Then only it will be allowed. Otherwise, don't do first consultation in absentia. So teletriage, I'll not go into this. And nowadays, there are some issues are coming up where many of the patients abusing the lady doctors on telemedicine is happening. But however, those are the issues which needs to be dealt. And be careful when you do telemedicine, but don't be apprehensive also. These issues will crop up very rarely, and we are using telemedicine since past 18 years almost, even in NIMHANS, and hardly we have got 1 or 2 cases of complaints. Otherwise, there are no any cases have gone to consumer court at this point of time, nor into any other case. So need not worry. And in the past 2 years after COVID, there are n number of consultation has been done. In eSanjeevani itself, it has cost more than 1 crore consultation. None of them have gone to the court. And if you take even the private practice, there are many telemedicine have been done. None of them have gone. So telemedicine in that case, if you ask me, it is a very safer, but have to be very careful. And be careful when you are using social media. Don't use the patient's data, all those things.